Hey everyone, so welcome to my first video. Today I'll be talking about my experience on the JET program. As some of you may know, last year from 2024 until this summer, I lived in Japan where I worked as an assistant language teacher in Hiroshima Prefecture. So I went there on the JET program, which is a program organized by the Japanese government, and on this program you can either work as an assistant language teacher in English, an ALT, or you can work as an international coordinator or CIR. So I went to Japan as an ALT and I went through my country of the Netherlands. But actually there are many countries that joined the JET program. I had colleagues from Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, New Zealand, South Africa. So yeah, actually many countries joined this program. There's actually a table you can find which country has how many spots. And so yeah, I came back to Europe last month and I thought it would be useful and interesting to make a video about my experience, because I know many people I've met there considering going on the JET program. So yeah, I have my notes here, so let's do it. Okay, so first, the application. The application depends on the country when it starts. I think for some countries they start like almost 1 year beforehand. For the Netherlands, the application starts in January, so kind of 6 months before, 8 months before. And I learned about the JET program during my exchange. When I was 21, I went on exchange in Matsumoto in Nagano Prefecture. So I met some JETs there who were like English teachers. Also, when I went to university to do my master's, some of my professors had been on the JET program and they really recommended it. Because I did Japanese studies and then I did a master's in Asian studies, so I really wanted to have some kind of hands-on work experience in Japan. So the application for me started in January. Actually, during that time, I was in Japan on my fieldwork for my master thesis research. So because I was in Japan, I had to actually plan a bit better, because what you had to do was you had to print out all these documents and then actually send them by post. So you can like email them, you have to send them by post to the embassy. So I kind of thought like, oh, you know, if I send these documents, you know, maybe they will be delayed, so I need to like calculate like 2 weeks of time. So yeah, basically I will talk a little bit about the documents, but please keep in mind that the process for my country, the Netherlands, is probably very different. Anyway, so this first kind of generic document, I actually don't remember the name. I think it was just like application form, something along those lines. It was just like my address, my educational background, my future plans. So for the Netherlands, we can't really choose where we go. Well, we can kind of choose, but I know for like the British jets and American jets, like they had this like open box and they could just fill out like anything. Like, oh, I want to go to Kyoto, I want to go to Osaka, I want to go to Tokyo. So for the Netherlands, they kind of get spots. So we only had 2 spots in 2024. We had one in Hiroshima Prefecture and one in Kumamoto. So I could only, like, the question was literally like, which one do you want to go to? That was it. Like, do you want to go to Kumamoto or do you want to go to Hiroshima? So I decided to go to Hiroshima, to Fukuyama City. Next, we had this kind of self-declaration of health. So you just had to do like an assessment of your own health, basically. Okay, then next, I had to write my statement of purpose. There are many videos you can find on how to write your statement of purpose for JET. Many examples. There was one really good video by Allison in Tokyo, and she kind of literally went through her whole statement of purpose, which was very useful, I remember. Basically, how I wrote my statement of purpose, I just looked at the goals the JET program has, which is like internationalization, like cultural exchange, and then the point is I teach kids English, right? So I just wrote about mine because I have a lot of teaching experience, wrote about my teaching experience. I wrote about my interest in Japan. I specifically wrote about, I started doing Japanese studies because as a teen in high school, I really liked Haruki Murakami, so the Haruki Murakami's novels. And then something I also wrote, which I think made me stand out a bit, was that I wrote about my experience knowing English as a second language. And then kind of my struggles, and that I was always kind of like embarrassed like of my accent. But actually I think this was one of my strengths going on the JET program, because I actually had experience learning English myself, and I think it was very, looking back on it, I think it was very helpful to the kids. Also, not only just to learn English, but also just for their motivation and like to feel more confident. Like, I would very much emphasize the fact that I'm not a native English speaker, like I also learned English. Anyway, so I kind of like put that together in my statement of purpose, and then kind of like my future goals. I wanted to do a PhD in Japanese studies, I wanted to improve my Japanese. Anyway, so I put the application form, health declaration, health declaration, statement of purpose, and I had to print copies of my degrees, grades, all this stuff. Anyways, put all of these in an envelope, and then I went to Japan Post and I was like, please send this for me to the Netherlands. Thank you very much. That was kind of the first round of the application. They're kind of like 2 rounds, like the paper application and then the interview, right? So I actually came back from my fieldwork in Japan, beginning of March, and I was gonna go to Sweden. But I got an email saying like, can you come to the embassy, which was like perfect timing because I was gonna go back. I don't live in my own country, so I was gonna go back to Sweden. Anyway, so I went to the embassy, I was invited for an interview. I was super nervous. I don't even really know why, because in my head I always very much have this mindset of, you know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't work out, it's fine, you know, I'll find something else. Like, it's not a problem. It's not like my whole life will be over or something. So anyways, I was invited for the interview. I've talked with many other jets after from many countries. Everyone has like a very different experience when it comes to the interview. My experience, I'm not sure how to summarize it. I just experienced it as very stressful. So I went into the embassy, like went to a room, then I talked with some people. Anyways, they do this thing where you're like sitting in a waiting room and they send like a person in and the person starts talking to you. That's already part of the interview. People don't realize this. And then they took me to the room. And so it was like a long table and there were like 6 or 7, maybe 6 people sitting there. So like I think 3 Japanese embassy employees, then a professor, then like 2 other like Dutch employees of that embassy. So I read online that in the interview for the JET program, they really want to see if you can like think on your feet. Is that what the expression is? So they asked like a lot of questions, like very fast. Like it was like follow-up question. The first part was in Japanese and I was like super nervous. Like the Japanese question they asked me was, what do you think of the fact that tourists have to pay to go on Mount Fuji now? Which I understood everything, I just was like so nervous that I couldn't give like a proper answer in Japanese, I remember. They asked me a lot of questions about also my life in Sweden, because by that time I was living in Sweden for almost 2 years. Yeah, I think many people in my country, they don't really go abroad to do like like they do like an exchange, but they don't live abroad. So I think they were like I think that's why they were very interested in that. Some of the questions I didn't even have answers to. Like I remember we were talking about my exchange in Japan and I think they asked me something like, oh, what kind of after university class activities did you do? And I said, I played shogi with my friends. Shogi is kind of Japanese chess, I guess. It's a board game. Well, it's kind of phrased or like framed as Japanese chess, basically. The interviewer asked me like, okay, can you explain the difference between regular chess and shogi? And I honestly didn't know because I never really played chess and I hadn't played shogi for a long time too. And I was super nervous. So I think I just told him that I didn't know. I think I made some joke like, oh well, the chess pieces are black and white and the shogi pieces are not. I think I said something silly like that and then no one laughed. I was like, well, actually I don't know because I never played chess and I haven't played this game for a long time. But I think actually that was a good move on my part to just be honest and be like, I don't have an answer to this question. Yeah, I don't know, I don't see the point in making up answers because like in job interviews and all this stuff, like I've did a lot of interviews in my life and people can always tell if you're just making something up. Well, not always, but in like certain circumstances, like people can tell like you're talking around the question or you're just like kind of making something up. It was very stressful and actually I came out of the interview and I was just like, I'm never gonna get this job. Okay, well I left and I was like, this interview didn't go well. I gotta apply for more jobs because I was gonna graduate from my master's that semester because I got the interview in March and was gonna graduate in May. So what I did is I applied to other jobs and actually I got offers. But then on the 1st of June, they sent me an email like, we want you, you were selected, we want you to go to Fukuyama in Japan. Okay, so after I got the yes from the interview, what I had to do was I had to get a medical health check. I had to deliver like more documents, like so many more documents. So the first thing I had to do was I needed to get like, I don't know what it's called in English. Yeah, I think it's called certificate of conduct. Anyways, it's just like prove you don't have a criminal record. That's basically this paper. But also, because I lived in Sweden for quite some time, I needed to get this document from the Netherlands and from the Swedish police. So I had like double documents to get. Yeah, if you're applying from JET from abroad, you have to like think of this. I had to do a health check. So the problem was in Sweden is that if it's like not an emergency thing, you have to wait for like a long time. Like you have to wait for 2 weeks or a month. So I called like the hospital and I was like, well, I need this because I need like a health document, like long scan, all this stuff, right? X-ray for like a visa because I'm gonna move abroad. Anyways, the nurse was very nice and they said to me like, honestly, you're better off going to a private doctor because this is gonna take like forever. So I was very lucky because I lived in Lund. There was like a special private doctor for visa applications and they only had a clinic in Stockholm, Gothenburg, and in Malmö, which is like next to where I lived. So I got super lucky, right? Because Sweden is like a very big country. But in the end it worked. I got all the documents, put them in an envelope and sent them to the embassy, and then I packed my stuff and then I went home. And then in July I picked up my visa and all this stuff and had like a meeting and everything. And then on the 3rd of August they flew me out to Japan. Basically what they do with everyone is they will fly you out, they will pay for your flight, they will fly you out to Tokyo and they will put you in the Keio Plaza Hotel for 3 or 4 days. And here you will get training. You will get to meet the other jets who are going to other places. You just take lectures together. It's actually pretty nice. I actually made a bunch of friends who went to different prefectures and I actually met up with them like somewhere in the year. Like I made some British friends who were going to stay in Kochi Prefecture, which is a beautiful place. It's a beautiful prefecture. And I met them like a few months after and they showed me around and they lived in like the mountains. Like it's such a nice place. So my BOE, the Board of Education, because you work for the Board of Education, my BOE flew me out to the city I was gonna work, Fukuyama. And yeah, so I went there and like we were met by like another ALT, 2 other ALTs, and they showed us around and they I was very fortunate because my BOE had housing for us. So I already had an apartment and everything. So yeah, they just dropped me off at an apartment and my colleagues were nice enough to like take me out to buy stuff for my apartment, like a futon, like all this stuff basically. In my city, I worked for the BOE. I would go to the BOE on Friday afternoon and then the morning and like basically 5 days of the week, every day I would go to a different school. I had 5 schools. So every day I would go to a different school in the area, and on Friday afternoon I would go to the BOE and meet up with my ALT colleagues, which were around 20 people I think. And I think the most fun thing was that they were all from many different countries. Like I actually liked that I worked at 5 schools. So every day I went to a different school. Basically at the schools I would get like a roster, like a schedule, and I would have to go to different classes and like teach English with a teacher. I worked at elementary and at middle school. At the middle schools, like the Chugako, I had like the same teacher I worked with a lot, which is quite like convenient. At the elementary schools I worked with a lot of different teachers, which is very fun. Overall I really enjoyed my job. Like I really like talking to the kids. I like teaching too. My original plan was to go for 2 years, but in the end I went for 1 year because I got a new job offer basically. But yeah, so as I said, I liked working at 5 schools, but what was very difficult was that I couldn't really get to know my colleagues that well because every day I was like somewhere else. Also, it was very hard for me to learn the kids' names. That's something I didn't like. Like it must be easier to go maybe to one school. I think being an ALT can be pretty tough. It's a very tough job. The BOE is very strict. Many jets or like ALTs, we all have a very different experience. Like for example, my friends in Kochi, they had one school, like they went there every day and they were on pretty good terms with like their BOE or their teachers. But yeah, I worked for pretty big cities, so pretty big BOE. They were very strict with everything. Like if you were 1 minute late, you had to like call your supervisor and then tell him. And for some reason, none of the jet videos have talked about this, But basically how it works is that if you are late, they take an hour of your Nenkyu. So Nenkyu is like basically your paid leave, but in Japan it's like by hours and not by days. Anyways, something I think is very important, especially if you're an ALT and you're always at the school, is that you need to really find stuff to do outside. There were like 3 reasons I went to Japan. I wanted to travel Japan, like I wanted to see more of Japan. I wanted to improve my Japanese language skills, and I wanted to get work experience in Japan. And I think it's really important if you go to Japan as an ALT, you need to have some goals, right? Like either your goals to like learn Japanese or improve your Japanese. I would highly recommend if you want to stay, like to learn Japanese, because like I don't really know, but being in Japan without knowing Japanese must be pretty hard. Like most of my colleagues didn't speak Japanese and they were having a hard time. I think the pay, so I don't exactly remember the pay. The pay for Japanese standard was pretty good. I had a very comfortable life there. However, the issue is that the Japanese, and this is very different for every country, right? Like the Japanese yen, like the Japanese economy is not doing so great. So the yen is very weak. So I actually moved to Norway. So when I came here with my savings from Japan, like I was out of my savings in a month because the yen has almost no value in Europe. So that's something definitely to think of, especially now that the yen is very weak. The yen used to be pretty strong like 5 years ago, because I remember the first time I went to Japan, it was very strong. Definitely travel. I traveled so much. Like I also traveled a lot because I knew I was gonna go back to Europe, and I knew that the money, like the yen, was not gonna be valuable there. So I really wanted to spend my Japanese money in Japan. Like just travel a lot. Like even if you're not a very outgoing person, just go and see things, just go and do stuff. Or I either traveled alone, or I traveled to meet a friend somewhere, make a Japanese study plan. Like I really wanted to improve my reading, so every day I was reading, reading, talking to people, talking to colleagues, and make friends. Like actually, for me personally, I felt like it was not difficult to make friends because, for example, first we were all flown into Tokyo and I met so many people. So I was staying in Hiroshima, so all the jets in Hiroshima, we would all have meetings together like once every half year. So we would have training together and then we would hang out. And I met a lot of people through like Hiroshima Prefecture. So every weekend we would like travel somewhere, like go to some city to hang out with people, which was like so much fun. And then also I met up with other jets throughout the country, in Tokyo, in Shikoku. Yeah, so just travel, make friends, learn Japanese. Like you need to have like goals outside of work, because I feel like the ALT job can be very draining because you're all the time around kids. Like you have to be like very, active and like, be happy, merry-go-round, something else. I think maybe this is a bit of a note for like non-native English speakers, which they don't have many on the JET program, or anyone from other countries, smaller countries, is that I feel like you should not underestimate kind of the cultural value you bring. Personally, looking back on my time as a teacher, the kids really enjoyed learning stuff. Like they loved it when I showed pictures of Europe. Like I wouldn't just show pictures of the Netherlands, but like also other countries, like places I traveled. I showed them pictures of like me living in Sweden. So yeah, definitely don't underestimate the cultural factor you bring. I think also it's very important for the students, at least the students I met. It's important also for them to learn that people are different, not all foreigners are the same. And I think that's such an important thing to discuss. And also I talk with the kids a lot about like, English is not my first language. Like I have an accent, it's fine, like I would actually sometimes, especially with the older kids, I would talk to them about like how I learned English, like playing video games or listening to music. Yeah, I think a lot of the kids, they just need motivation and just someone to kind of like, you can do it, this kind of mentality. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time with my students. Like they were so nice to me. I had only good experiences with my students. They always wanted to like show me stuff or like make me origami and like hang out with me and talk to me. And I didn't speak Japanese with them, I spoke English with them, but they would always speak Japanese to me for some reason. And if they didn't understand, I would just like draw it. Like I used to love drawing, a lot of like gestures. So yeah, it was really fun. Okay, so this was basically the video. I'm not sure how helpful this insight is. Yeah, there are like a lot of more practical videos with like tips on how to write your statement of purpose, or like more on the experience. So I will link those down below, I think. So yeah, thank you for watching, and if you apply to the JET program, I wish you good luck.